Hi, darlings. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today, I have a Bible journaling process for you here in my Interleaf Bible. And I am using a couple of stamps from By the Well for God, but this All Nations stamp set, I will link it below, is one that really inspired this page. I love this linear art, so I'm going to be using this Dina Wakley masking stencil. I've had this in my stash for a while, but I have not used it, and I'm so excited to dig into it for the first time now. This is usually used to mask out letters and is really popular with mixed media. And I wanted to use it here in my Bible journaling page for a big title saying go. So I'm going to be trying a technique that I actually learned from Julie, who's also here on YouTube. And she uses this Zig pen and she puts it on stencils and then she lets it dry and then it will be a temporary adhesive. And so I go ahead and add some glue to that and I put those to the side. And then I'm going to be pulling off the stamps I know I want to use and kind of arranging them on my page so I can get a feel for how much space I will have in the middle to place my title. I am going to be using some of the Tim Holtz Distress Oxides. You guys know they're my favorite. I'm going to be using 4 different colors. I want to use 2 different blues for the top and 2 different greens for the bottom. I am arranging my little stamp sets here. The stamp set comes with 2 different worlds. One of them is a circular globe and the other one is a globe that is in the shape of a heart, and I loved that one. So I'm going to be using that one instead of the circular globe. So grabbing my stamp block, I'm just prepping myself to go ahead and stick those down. But first, I want to make sure that I put down these stencils. And this is going to, again, block or mask that portion. And I end up adding that towards the top, leaving some space for the rest of the verse on the bottom. And then I'm going to be pulling out my Distress Oxides. I am using I'm using Blueprint Sketch, and I'm also using Broken China. Those are the 2 blues that I'll be using towards the top of my page. I'm using my favorite method, which is the smooshing method. So I'm going to be grabbing some plastic packaging and adding that blue color. I'm going to be starting with the deepest color first, and I'll add some of that lighter color. And this one really overpowers the top of my page, but I'm okay with that because it really brings a strong blue sky. So with the smooshing method, I smoosh some of that ink onto some packaging, and this ink, which is the Distress Oxide ink, it actually is water reactive, so it activates and then oxidizes. So I use a Distress sprayer, which is Tim Holtz as well, and then I'm going to go ahead and dry off my first layer. I also keep some paper towels handy. That way I can pick up some of that extra where it's pulling a bit too much, because this is only my first layer. I'm just going to dab a little bit and then dry off that page. So after I dry off my first layer, then I'm going to wipe off the packaging, and then I'm going to smoosh in that Broken China color, which is a lighter blue. And then I will go ahead and spritz that as well. And then I'm going to add a layer of that lighter blue on top. What I love is that Distress Oxides, they really mix really well. And you can layer the colors. You can dry and add more layers to make the color stronger. You can add softer colors to kind of tone down the colors if you like. So I am doing that here. I grab my journaling pen and then I go ahead and trace the go on my page just so it pops off. And then I'm going to take off the stencil, the masking stencil. And as you can see, it's just white in that middle. It really masks that off really well. And then I'm going to use the same packaging. And now I'm going to work on the bottom, which is going to be the earth. And so we have the sky towards the top with those blues and the earth at the bottom with the greens, or the land, I should say. I'm using pine needles needles and rustic wilderness, but actually I pull out pine needles, but I end up just using rustic wilderness because it does a really good job mixing with the blue that kind of blended downwards. And so it kind of already has two colors going. So I end up just using rustic wilderness at the bottom. And as you can see the two colors kind of blended there. And I love the effect it gives. So now I'm going to dry this off. One thing I will say is when you're stamping, because you're using water with Distress Oxide and the smooshing method, you want to make sure that your page is really, really dry before you stamp over it. Because if not, when you stamp, you can tear your page. I speak from experience. It's happened to me before. So now I'm going to use my favorite black VersaFine Black Onyx ink. And this really grabs the details of different stamps really well. So I'm going to be using that one. And I place my airplane towards the top. And then I'm going to pull off the girl that's walking. And I love her because she looks like she's in action, like in an action type of stance, ready to go and walking towards the mission that Christ has for her. So I add her towards the bottom. And then I fill in a little bit of the spaces that may have not stamped as well as the impression. And then I'm going to add that heart, just placing it to make sure I know exactly where I want it. Then I'll ink up my stamp. I find inking the stamp this way instead of smushing it down on the ink is actually a better and effective way to not get lots of ink on your stamp. So I love using that method, bringing the ink to the stamp instead of putting the stamp and smushing it down into the ink pad. So off screen, I add the rest of the verse onto my page, and here's a last look at what that looks like. I love how this turned out. I added some splatters, and I'll link that stamp set below. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless. Bye.